some structure, but not
Folks,
like
would you please join me in pledging allegiance to the
square
flag?
box.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the April 11th meeting of the Town of Canandaigua Planning Board. Has some unfamiliar faces, so I'll make sure so you know who's at the front desk here. To my far right is Kim Burkert. She's our remote access facilitator. We have back for repeat performance. John Robatella, our secretary for this evening. Then we have our board members, Mark Tolbert, Scott Neal, Amanda Van Laken, Bob LaCourse, Chuck Euler, our town planner, Shauna Monchek, and our representative, our town engineer, Lance Brabet. We have a town board member with us this evening. Good evening, Adeline. And any other dignitaries? No? Just a comment. All righty, we'll follow the agenda as published. And if you would, when we get to your part of the agenda, I will call on someone representing the applicant to make a presentation as to what their application entails. The board will then deliberate over the application, ask any questions, have any comments. That would be the time for the board to offer those. And then I will go to the general public, both here and remotely, to see if there's any questions or comments from the public. And then the board will deliberate on the application and hopefully come up with a decision this evening regarding the application. If you want, when you address the board, please come to the podium, give us your name and address so we have that for the record. And if you haven't signed in outside, please do so. That would sort of give us a belts and suspenders as far as who's here. I would like to point out we have two emergency exits to my left and right, should the need arise. And we have one public hearing tonight that has been duly advertised in the Daily Messenger on April 7th for Adam Stahl. So it has been published and hopefully noted. Right now, we'll go to privilege of the floor, which is the public's opportunity to address the board regarding an issue that is not on the agenda. So if you have anything that is not on the agenda, you'd like to address the board, please go to the podium. If not, we'll move on to our first application. If not, I'm going to take chairman's liberty here and sort of go out of order a little bit. We do have a continued site plan that I think we should go to first, and that's regarding Sunset Ridge. Sal, come to the podium and sort of give us an update where we are. I think we had a pretty thorough review at the last meeting. I think we gave you some homework to do, and how we made out with that.
So Sal Leacher, hello, attorney for the applicant. Yeah, so I think the few remaining things were the local law that Doug Finch brought up to the board's attention about lots being served by private roads. We had a meeting, and I think we figured out a way to address that just by tweaking the access, giving two of the lots that were previously served by those private roads, giving them direct access to the cul-de-sacs. So this way we have just those two on a shared, other two lots on shared driveways instead of all of them being on one private drive. So I believe we've addressed that. And then we also renewed our request that the condition of preliminary relating to the winter maintenance agreement for the road in section 3 and 4. It's in the works. I still waiting to see the revision that meeting between Jim Fletcher and Matt Kern, in which they ironed out a few terms. But, you know, that process is still moving along, and, you know, unfortunately, there probably will still be some time until that's finalized, because Hopewell's attorney still will have to review that too. So that's why we requested that that be amended, so that it only relates to sections 3 and 4, since they're the only lots that will be served by that road.
Did you do that formally in writing or something? I know we
submitted
discussed it.
Yes, well, I know Brennan submitted it in the beginning, you know, it was also a
Yeah.
point we raised before we got the preliminary conditional. Then I sent an email to Shauna with, you know, it wasn't like a letter, but it was just in an email requesting that. So we're hoping that this board can make that amendment to the condition.
Okay.
Sorry if I caught you off guard. I thought you would have heard.
No, I thought we were gonna know the direction. I thought I'd assumed that by the time the the final is approved, that the preliminary would be to a point, including this condition of the winter maintenance, that would be signed and sealed and delivered, and that the preliminary and the final could be signed at the same time. I didn't know there was a request to amend the actual agreement, but
Yeah, well, I apologize for the confusion. Yeah, unfortunately, it's gonna take a while. That has to go to the town board. And I don't think the town board is gonna review it until Hopewell's attorney signs off, just so we can avoid a situation where the town board approves it. And then Jeff Graff goes and looks at it and tweaks a couple words, and then now the town board has to reapprove it. So we'd like to at least, you know, Chris Nadler signed off on it, like Hopewell to sign off on it too. So there's a lot of rounds of revisions.
I mean, I'm getting as frustrated as you are.
Yeah,
I understand that Jim and the highway superintendent of Hopewell had come up with an agreement in principle as to how this thing would work. It was just a matter of the attorneys applying the legalese, whereas in their course, and we'd have an agreement that could go before both boards and be taken care of. Now, I think the last meeting, were you going to send them what Jim had? Somebody was going to send you what Jim and the superintendent had come up
The revisions, there was revisions made
on the
to the
agreement.
agreement from both parties. I do not recall who was going to send it to Sal, maybe you guys already received the
I did.
modified version.
no.
I don't know who was supposed to send it.
So I had a meeting a long time, back in July, I think it was, with Jim Fletcher, Matt Kern, Hopewell's CEO and their supervisor. So I like jotted down the notes and general terms. We were hoping, I know we had gone back and forth a lot, because we've heard, oh, this is common, you know, the town's done it before, we have a form floating around. After lots of digging, yeah, we couldn't find any agreement like that. So I did a lot of research and came up with one from scratch. I drew up a very nice indemnification paragraph for the town of Canandaigua that indemnifies them from any damage resulting from the work performed according to that agreement. I met with Matt Kern and showed him the agreement. He made a couple tweaks, minor stuff like, you know, in Canandaigua, if they hit your mailbox, they'll replace it with whatever.
Yeah.
They don't do that at Hopewell, they give you a cheap plastic one. So, you know, I put that in the agreement. So the residents, they'll all get a copy and, you know, acknowledge it as well. So little stuff like that, ironing it out. And I thought Matt Kern was 100% on board with it, but apparently maybe he had another tweak or
I
two.
think there are some minor revisions being made. It's my understanding that the agreement as submitted has been modified, and then they're going to bring it to the town boards as with that modification. Both to the town of Canandaigua's town board and ultimately to the town of Hopewell's town board for the review. Obviously, both boards are going to rely on their attorneys of law to weigh in on it. We joked about Hopewell's attorney possibly taking a while going through the process, but I believe the next step is formally that modified version that the town has in their hands currently is going to go before both boards. When, I do not know. I don't know if it was scheduled for the upcoming April 17th board meeting or not. So I think that would be the next step the town would be taking, is to put that form in front of the town board.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a good idea to wait for that, since we don't know how long it's gonna take, and ultimately this agreement, we're talking about this road up here for sections 3 and 4, many years, and also it really doesn't come into play until the road's actually accepted for dedication, and then the following winter. Again, we're just talking about who's gonna snowplow. You know, it's very, it's a minor burden.
I think so.
I thought of it.
All right, well, who's gonna get a copy of this agreement? I think Sal should take a look at it.
I think we would have the town attorney forward it to you, attorney, with the information. I think that would be the direction that I would suggest. The planning board, by the staff, and staff will contact the town attorney that will forward over that revision, because I haven't seen it, I don't have it. I'll let that forward now. So I
Jim
believe,
has it.
I believe Jim has a version of that, I think Matt Curran of Town Hopewell has a version of it, I think Chris Matt obviously has a version.
Okay, at the last meeting, I think we also had asked Brandon to, you know, what the status of the, speaking with DOT, with the county, on the sewers, or Jim with the water. I think we're trying to get all those things buttoned up. Have we had any progress on any of those? You know?
I don't know that there any, that there's been any updates there. Last I talked to Brennan, he hadn't heard back from the DOT. I'm also not entirely sure of what issues with water and sewer you're talking about. I know you brought up the possibility of redesigning the layout of the sewer.
The laterals, yeah, that was
Right. And
something I asked them to consider. Do you know if he's looked at that at all?
yeah, I think he did, and you know, what's on the plan now, I think, is the product of a long back and forth with the county, figuring out how they wanted it. So what we have now is the best solution to address the sewer. That's acceptable to the county. I don't know how we can redesign it without kind of restarting that whole
Well,
process.
I don't want to get in the weeds too much here. If you're gonna stick with that plan, there are a lot of easements have to be assigned to those laterals that allow for maintenance across lots. And those easements should be shown on the plan to account for that. They don't currently. We had also requested that sidewalks be installed on 364. The plans that came in, and I stress, came in this afternoon. Don't show those sidewalks yet. We're just, there's a lot of loose ends. I feel much more comfortable, especially since this is a final approval. I don't know, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not, you know, the board can certainly chime in here, but I think there's still a lot of loose ends that have to be addressed.
I concur.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, board, and applicant too. I think one of the things that I brought up at the last board meeting was that I thought there might be some conditions that we're gonna have to massage. You mentioned one. And I do recall you guys formally submitted something a while ago regarding making modifications to those conditions, but I don't recall what specific conditions that was requesting. But I can point out to the board tonight that there is at least 4 that I see that are, the way they're written, it says prior to an approval of final subdivision for any section or phase. What one of them is specifically in regards to the preliminary overall plans have to be filed, which means they have to be signed. You can't sign them until the maintenance agreement. So they can't technically even meet that condition unless that condition is massaged. So in order for the board to move forward with any final approval, whether that's tonight or the next meeting or whenever, that condition has to be changed and modified in order to allow the applicant to pursue and actually get and receive final approval.
Would that also be condition 13?
Well, I also highlighted 8, 9, and 10. 8 is Kennesaw County Sewer District. As written, it says an approval of the sanitary sewer design and district extension are to be obtained and submitted to the town prior to an approval of final subdivision plan. I believe we have information from the county that says they have no issues with the design, but I don't know technically it's an approval. Or whether or not the board, if that's good enough, that's fine, but those are things that we have to technically look at to make sure that we're compliant there. Number 9 says all comments from DOT are to be addressed and approved, approval design. I do not know if DOT technically is going to grant them an approval as part of the preliminary overall review. I think they probably are going to wait till they get final plans. So I think that's a condition that's gonna have to be potentially modified. I think 10 has been addressed, but I don't have anything in my files that says the town attorney has reviewed and approved the maintenance, management and operation planning agreement for the conservation easement area. I know they submitted one, I just don't know that he's technically approved it. That's something that we most certainly should get the attorney to weigh in on. And then to your point, 13, but 13 does not prevent you guys from granting final approval. 13 as written just says prior to receiving signatures on the overall plans. But that condition as written prevents condition number 3 from being addressed. So that might be on the table to be modified as well. It sounds like from the applicant's position, they would like to modify it. But I think those 5 conditions at some point, as part of your deliberations of final, are gonna have to be modified to accommodate the ability for you guys to grant final phase 1 approval on the project. Now, whether it gets addressed by the applicant or the conditions get modified, I believe that has to happen.
So it's like a checkoff for these guys, easements, sidewalks. We got late, the private drive access, that's already been taken care of. And then with the board's recommendation to changing those 4 conditions, we could grant primary approval on phase 1.
What conditions?
Okay, yeah, we'll go through these
Someone in the board was ready to do that.
when we get all the.
Well, we're not looking at preliminary phase 1, we're looking at the final phase.
Right, you would,
Yes.
the applicant would
Yeah.
submit a request for amendment of those conditions as written. Maybe they make their suggestions on how they want them to be modified. I don't know that that matters. I think it's really comes down to the board anyway. But ultimately, you guys would have to, we would have to amend those conditions before granting final approval. Assuming that was the direction the board went.
Sewers, and it mentioned having the easements identified on the plans, right?
Yeah.
So I was under the impression that that was already addressed, and if not, like, wasn't that part of MRV's review?
Are we talking about the lateral issue that?
No, not
Oh.
the lateral issue, because I think we're gonna end up sticking with what got approved.
I
I don't
think
want to.
we might be talking the same thing, but laterals that cross property lines are gonna need an easement. Now, whether, I don't recall honestly, if the plans show that easement, you do show the easements where the sewer main extends outside of an area that's gonna be owned and maintained by Candlewood Lake Sewer District.
Right.
I do not recall if individual lots show the easement. They may, that might be this one right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. that
Now,
one.
of course, Brian couldn't make it tonight, he had family matters. So I don't want to speak for him, but I'm confident that it's.
Those very much could be the easements for the sewer.
Yes, it's different than what we saw last. Yeah, last time. There are, yeah, it takes care of it. It's lot 10,
Good, I'm glad.
lot 12.
That was the same road configuration that the new ones. Private drive configuration.
Yeah, the meeting you had with Doug and Shauna, how did that, you're still gonna have one driveway where with 3 or 2 or 3 frontages on the public street. Each will have their own frontage, but
Each will have its
use
own
a common
frontage.
drive.
2 of the lots, that have the narrow frontage, they're gonna have a shared drive.
I think like lot
So
10
8,
is
9 will
from-
have a shared driveway, 10 will have its
That's
own
frontage.
driveway.
And
Same
this
thing
one
with
would
these
connect
lots.
right there.
So that 25.
25 will have its own,
frontage to that.
26 and 27 will share.
So how does that solve the requirement for the multi-path?
Because its frontage is on a right of way, its access is on a public right of way. Yep. Not a private drive or a private road or private right of way.
Each lot has its own. frontage
Correct,
On the public street.
access.
Does that mean the
Yes.
driveway has to access that?
No, each
road?
lot does not have its own access.
Each driveway has its own, each lot, yeah, has its own access from a public right of way.
So there'll be 3 driveways.
Well,
Yeah,
two will
driveway, these two accessing off a private drive,
way,
Okay,
and then lot 25 has frontage. So my question is I'm assuming that driveway then comes out to the cul-de-sac,
Correct.
is that the
and
way
then
around?
lot 10 will come out to the cul-de-sac.
Not 10,
Did that first slide show there?
I don't know, it may. Can you go back
I
to
don't
the
think it
first, it
did.
That one.
doesn't show the driveway, but it shows the lot configuration.
Yeah, it shows the frontage.
On the public.
The driveways
right
might
of
be
way.
shown on the site.
It shows access to each lot, 27, 28, and all single. Like long driveways to each one. Is that right?
That's not,
Oh, so this property goes like this, so
Yeah.
this, actually, they have.
Yeah.
So they're built like flag lots? Is
Yeah,
that what
that's
they're-
frontage and that's frontage.
Yeah,
So all 3 of them have frontage on
Right.
that,
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
They got rid of the private drive in this one.
the private drive is gone.
yeah.
Right.
there's a
Yes,
driveway
on
that goes
both.
in. You're right, yes.
Single.
Understand.
So it's like 3 flag lots, is that what we're talking about?
By definition, definitely 2, I don't know what the frontage requirement is. So it might all be technically 5 lots under that requirement.
okay. So again, they meet code because they have frontage on a public street.
Correct.
But when it comes to physically putting a driveway, it'll be one private drive that will service
All 3
those
lots.
back lots.
Just
It'll be a
lots.
common drive, shared drive with,
Yeah,
which would be subject to an easement agreement between
those two.
those owners, and that's why the easement plan showed easement to be provided.
Right, and that'll just be the standard, maintenance agreement, talking about who's responsible for what proportion of,
Yeah.
so, it's-
Again, maintenance,
right, you can't block someone else's access.
who's gonna seal coated,
Right,
how it's gonna be done, who's gonna pay for it, how you're gonna divvy it up. Okay, I'm still a little comfortable with moving ahead. We got the plan this afternoon. I'm sensing that from the rest of the board too. Just looking-
Yes.
I was chatting with you earlier.
I didn't get to look at what they meant.
Well, they came in at.
Oh.
Even today.
Yeah, we had that in earlier.
Yes.
So what are our avenues of action this evening? What are our possible avenues of action? Because I think I'm getting in the weeds, so to speak, a little bit, I'm getting lost. And is there anything to act on this evening? Are we continuing? If we're continuing,
Well, it's either,
what's left?
it's either action or continuation.
Okay.
That's two options.
If the board wanted to move forward with final phase 1 as it's been presented to you, then you could, for as long as you guys amend the conditions of preliminary overall approval, which I provided to you. Those conditions are gonna have to be amended to some degree to allow the board to move forward with an approval tonight for phase 1.
Mhm.
If the board feels that they need time to review the amended plan that was provided, or feels that there's things missing, or just wants time to think of the conditions that they want to modify, then you would continue the application until a later meeting, whether it's the next one or whatever, and then we would present something, I'm assuming at that point, to you guys for action.
And you haven't done your review of the file.
MRB group has, but we held off based on the last meeting, with the concern that there was going to be a modification to the plans. Didn't make sense to issue a comment letter, only for the plans to be modified for us to have to issue another comment letter. We did find out that there was very insignificant changes to the plans, but like the board, we didn't see them until today. I don't think that's the applicant's fault. I think they were just working through the constraints that were provided. Well, unfortunately, I just haven't had a chance to look at them and then issue a letter based on that.
Well, I don't want to sit here and discuss amending the preliminary overall, because preliminary overall it is what it is, and I think it was agreed to that that would be the document under which we would move forward toward the final.
Right.
And, you know, I guess the only condition that I thought might be somewhat, no, I don't want to amend it.
Real quick, I think Lace just mentioned that as far as the DOT comments, that they more than likely won't issue a final approval until they have the final set of plans in front of them. So it sounds like it's going to be an impossible condition to satisfy.
Yeah, it's no chicken or the egg thing. It's like, you know, if they require changes to the the approach to the intersection, then you'd have to come back here and get your plans.
Right, but they wouldn't even make that recommendation unless we got final. I think it would be appropriate to make that a condition on final, that pending DOT review, that, you know, that we understand that that's something that's in the air.
Knowing full well if they change the plan, then you might have to come back
To amend it,
Right.
correct.
to amend.
I mean, the town wouldn't be able to issue a permit
Mhm.
to begin anything until such time that that was addressed. And if it was a condition, we wouldn't be able to issue, we won't be able to sign the plans till they address that condition, if it was modified. Finally. I think it's very important to make this very, very clear. Condition number 3 as written requires the applicant to get signatures on preliminary overall subdivision plans. But right now, we can't until the road maintenance agreement gets approved by both communities. And then for that plan to be filed with the county before you guys can grant final approval. I can assure you that is not going to happen before your next meeting. It probably won't happen before your May meetings unless we amend that condition. Unless the board considers amending that condition. And I'm not pushing them, I just want to make it clear that that's
the
an action item
consequences.
that I think has to be discussed.
Right, and then the sidewalk issue, that wasn't a condition on the preliminary, right? That was just something that was brought up.
At final.
I think so.
The
Last meeting.
Okay,
For the phase
and
one.
I just want to make a few comments on it if I can. We're 100% on board for granting an easement to the town to allow future development of the sidewalk. I have a lot of issues just from a liability standpoint about building a sidewalk to nowhere where it's not connected on either side. I just, if you build it, they will come. I don't want to invite people to walk on an unfinished sidewalk. I'm also worried about the practical effect, like putting the sidewalk in and you're not going to connect it for another 4 or 5 years down the road. By the time that comes, we're probably going to have to rip up a lot of it to, you know, to continue the development of it. Just
Point number 19 was very clear about that. The sidewalks on 364 are to be installed from the southern property line of lot 19 to the northern property of lot 1 and be constructed as part of section 1.
oh, that was a condition of
Yes.
preliminary. Oh, okay, I misunderstood that. Well, I guess I just like the town to consider that. I mean, maybe holding off on installing it, but we have to build the sidewalk to nowhere. I guess we will. It just doesn't seem wise in my estimation. Like I said, it's like
We've heard that plea many times over, and
yeah, it's.
but
Has it worked in the past?
Has it worked?
No, I mean installing the sidewalks and having it not connected on both sides.
Sure, we have it,
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
have them all over the
all
town.
right.
There's things that would have to be done to to prevent somebody from tripping or a hazard that the town has considered using before, some kind of a signage. That might help with some of the concerns that you're presenting, but it's stuck between the. two.
Honestly, especially like in the winter, if there's a snow on there and you don't realize that. You're actually walking into a ravine.
Lance, could you have that RD work on their review and get that done and so I'll continue to pursue, the county and make sure Jim Fletcher's okay with the water, because I heard something the other day at a meeting that he was concerned about the water line going through the property and
I think it was the interconnection.
the Hopewell side. Yeah. Just again, too many loose ends. I certainly recommend it. I hope would consider a continuation of this.
All right, I'm just worried. It seems like a lot of these loose ends are kind of getting discovered.
Well, they've been loose ends for a long time. And
But
we'd like to have one. We just come to every meeting and talk about the same stuff.
Yes.
And it's time to get them resolved for both your benefit and ours. We have other things to worry about, so we could at least taken care of it. And I think when you prepare a approval resolution for the next meeting, Lance, if you would
I can
list,
only do that if you guys are open to amending that condition. There's no, I can't, okay, at least I most, let me rephrase it. I most certainly will draft up an approval resolution. That's not a problem.
I mean, just a general comment, we went through a long period of time of public input on this. It took
Yes.
a long time to get to the approval,
Yes,
to get to these 20 points.
we spent a lot of time
And we're-
discussing.
If we're talking about modification to those points at this point in time, after all of that effort,
Mhm.
without bringing the public back in to discuss it, I think we're making an error.
I believe the only unresolved conditions here relate to getting feedback from the state agencies, which have been dragging their feet. Mark, there's nothing we can do there. Hearing back from DOT, we submit it to them. And that's it, we're not important to the state, unfortunately. And, and then the other stuff too, like I submitted that winter maintenance agreement in November. I got it back from the town in February with no changes made to it. Apparently what I submitted in November was fine. And now also, now there's additional people that want to see it. Again, that's out of our control. And I really don't know what else there is for the public to weigh in on, except for maybe trying to get the state to respond fast. But look at the water issue too, that just came up on Monday. So I guess,
but it's gotta be resolved.
sure, surely, my understanding is it only relates to section 4 of this project. The 2 lots all the way up top. If we can surely have that resolved before we come in for final on section 4 or even section 3. It's a brand new concern that popped up that has no bearing on sections 1, 3, and 2. We just want to get started on section 1. That's it. And I think all these concerns only relate to the other portions of the project. Except for the sidewalk thing, which if, we can,
It's a condition.
put that in, right?
It's already a condition.
And I understand that sections 3 and 4 are in the future, right? Like it's further out in the future, but at the same time, we do look at this holistically. We're not just only looking at section 1, right? Like we want to ensure that 3 and 4 can be successful and that we've vetted all of those topics now. And I think that's kind of just been our standard, if I could call it that in some way, of, we do look at the project holistically. And I think for me, in my opinion, is I keep coming back to the winter maintenance agreement, because if that, very low likelihood that it doesn't go through and, it blows up or it's delayed or whatever, like very low likelihood that it doesn't move forward or it's changed or modified or delayed or whatever. I would still feel more comfortable acting with that, at least showing some progress and steps to final decision.
I agree with those comments. I think our surrounding community takes a terrific amount of scrutiny related to projects that get approved to start that don't complete because they can't for some reason or the other. Often not due to planning, but sometimes it is. It could be too, that reason as well. So getting as much of this as front loaded as possible is good. That's important to the project.
I know winter maintenance sound fancy, but it's really just who's gonna plow it.
But if you,
It's what it comes
it's still
down to.
important, right?
I
Like,
agree,
we're
I
still
agree.
talking.
But it's,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, I just, yes and no, right? If nobody's willing to maintain that road,
Right,
then it's no longer a public road, which then means we have a private drive scenario that we have to address. So
Yeah.
from that standpoint, I guess I disagree. But I also think it's important for the board to, I just pointed this out again. We have an extension, the second one that goes to June 9th. I don't know if that's the date, it's June.
June.
Town board sounds like may only be seeing this for the first time at their May meeting, that would be the first meeting. So I think it might make sense for the applicant to hear what is the level of comfortness related to that maintenance agreement that you're looking for, or is it actual approval, which I don't know that you'll have from the town of Canandaigua Town Board before that deadline of the extension runs out. So I just, between now and some meeting between that extension, I think we're gonna have deliberations on as to what exactly it is that you're looking for as it relates to that
Mhm,
mainstream. It might be the approval of it, but I
mhm,
just think that needs to be ironed out.
mhm.
it does make you feel better, both candidate and both those highway superintendents have reviewed and approved it, and Chris Mather also reviewed and approved it as well.
He's gonna push it across the goal line. That's the whole thing. I mean, we sit here and talk about, coulda, woulda, shoulda.
I guess I
Who's
gotta
gonna do it?
show up at Jim Fletcher's office every day, and knock on his door.
And I think it goes to the town board now, but I don't know. At that point, there's a process that the town has to go through that.
Is the Hopewell portion of this project been started?
No,
So nothing that side or adjacent to this related to this project?
no,
They've only received preliminary approval of those 9 lots contingent on
Everything on this side
everything on this site. Because all the water and sewer kind of
has to get there.
run through it.
Okay, someone want to make a motion regarding continuation?
When are we continuing it to?
Next meeting?
Is that
25th?
April 25th?
Okay, what's gonna happen at that?
Yes.
Right, that's when it's gonna be different. too.
We're all gonna look at the plans
Mhm,
that we just got.
mhm,
We're gonna have MRB's review.
mhm.
Lance will put together a draft resolution for the final plan approval. The applicant is going to at least commit to the sidewalks, even though they don't show on the plan. I'm not saying you have to go and do another set of plans, because that. I think you just, but your review letter will probably address that. So in response to the MRB letter, you would so state that you would be needing that. And what else we got? I'm just trying to limit the number of conditions on the final approval, because I remember somewhere in my past in this job that town is, it's not limited, but there is some sort of limit as to the number of conditions that can be imposed on a final plan. Okay, everything should be taken care of at the plan. I think that's what we're trying to do, and so we can limit the number of conditions, if any, on the fund. Shoot for that. I'll be happy. Hopefully, the board will be happy. Applicant will be happy. So, did I get a motion?
Before that, if we push it to the next meeting, there is a chance if everything comes together that we could vote on it with the change in the amendments. Modify it.
There's no chance. The agreement is never gonna get done that quick.
No, that's the amendment to take care of it.
Right.
He's saying, he's talking about amending it.
If it amends,
Brought that up. These two projects, this was designed purposely, but not have a road go through. This is built to stand on its own. This is built to stand on its own. This private drive has nothing to do with all this. It's even a different project. It's, you know, they could custom move.
it's one project.
Right, but if this road never gets, for some reason, the towns don't agree on who's gonna plow it, and we have to come back for a private drive or whatever, it could stay forever wild. It could be 4 or 5 years till this ever gets done. Right now, I think it's ridiculous to hold up this section 1 for this little agreement here for this. It might never happen. Or if it does happen, it's gonna be 3, 4, 5 years down the road. That's all I'm saying. And as far as the DOT goes, I've been doing this a long time. DOT does not respond until they have final plans. I've pulled many DOT permits. They won't even look at it unless it's a final signed plan. And Lance can clarify that. I mean, that's how DOT is. There's just,
I do think that condition will be tough.
you know. But there are no other loose ends. I mean, except for the sidewalk, which it should have been shown in there, which I have no problem putting in.
And we just got, we have to have these normally,
But these plans are no different than what you had before, except for the sidewalk, which
and
still.
private drives changed.
Right.
Yeah. So that answered a lot of different questions.
But, well, the only thing that changed on the private drive is the shared driveway now. That's it.
Yeah.
Everything stays the same. This is still gonna go back here. The only difference is this driveway is not for this lot here. It's this one here. The driveways are gonna move right there. That's the only change. But that's section 2. We're not asking for final for section 2. That can be a condition of section 2 approval. Right now, we're just asking for section 1. There are no changes at all in section 1. 0. Nothing's gonna change between now and 2 weeks.
Amanda, did you make a motion on the continuation?
You read my mind, what I was
Oh, I
going to,
thought
yes.
I saw you take a deep breath.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any
I'll
other
formally make
questions,
that condition.
Bob, you have any other questions?
Yeah.
No.
Any other? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We'll have items that I mentioned. Hopefully. Think of that. All right, folks, I'm sorry to keep you waiting, but that was something we had to address. On my agenda, we'll get back on it. All right, we have a public hearing. Adam Stahl.
I am here, guys. Can you see me all right? I'm walking around. I'm on double parent duty. My wife's out with strep throat. So
Adam, hang on, let me introduce you and then you can speak up. This is an application from Adam Stahl representing Sarah Frank, property owners of 3333 State Route 6364. Requesting a special use permit to install a sign for Star Cider. Sign is approximately 42.25 square feet. It will be installed at the entrance to the property. And I will open the hearing. And this application is for a freestanding sign for revision to the special use. No, it's freestanding.
It's a commercial sign, therefore it needs
Okay.
a special use. Right, and then Adam has a lease. Sorry.
can you hear me? Yep, on the adjacent property.
Yeah, Adam, real quick. I think most of us know what you're trying to do here and you're just trying to duplicate the sign you have at the corner, right?
You got it.
Same size, same shape,
Same size, same shape, same material, identical.
And the reason being, you want people to see the sign. You want
Yeah,
it-
and the driveway, so there's none of that brake pumping action, really addressing this out of feedback from the customers and safety concerns. And the fact that we have an avenue to pursue addressing that is good for us.
Okay. I guess the only question that came up, I believe in PRC, and I guess for the good of the group here, this is on property that's owned by Sarah. And you have a lease with her for the driveway, and I assume you are expanding that lease to allow for you to put the sign there.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, they're with us. They had to sign all the paperwork for the approvals, so they are in agreement and like the idea of having the sign there.
Okay. And you're protected that the driveway, I assume that's your only access right now to your establishment. So if somebody want to see that remain, and I assume the same goes for the sign.
Yep.
Okay. Board, any questions?
No.
So the current sign that's there, that would go away.
No.
No.
That would- So we would keep two signs.
I do have a question more for Shauna. I think,
Yeah.
the sign code says that there'll be a ground sign. So how can we grant them a second ground sign? Is it based on a different address
It's based on a different parcel.
parcel? That's what I was
Yes,
thinking.
yes, that's why we're bringing
Allowing.
it through that way.
The other thing I think is the other question I had was, we're only allowed 40 square feet per
Correct.
sign, and they're
20 and
asking,
20.
they're asking for more.
I don't believe so.
42, I
Six
think
and
it
a half by
was,
six
double
and a
sided,
half.
that's 84. I think that's what I showed. Is that right, Mark? That we saw?
Adam,
Numbers
Adam, you're muted.
42 in my head, overage or something.
The sign is
Yeah.
4x4.
Oh.
The frame is
42.24 is what,
4x4.
The sign itself.
but it says approximately
Structure.
42.24 square feet of ground mark signage.
the sign space, 20 square feet.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not the structure, it's the
The
face.
sign.
It's
Okay,
So
the
it's
actual
16.
signage.
so the other question I had was, when you were approved for your initial sign, one of the comments on your initial sign was that you have lighting on it, you want lighting. The answer was no, but now I notice there is up lighting on your sign now. Are you gonna put lighting on the sign now? If so, it should be downput lighting.
Yep, that's fine. We actually have, I can pull there's solar lights, like battery powered solar lights. I can pull the ground ones and just leave the ones that point down from the sign down. That's fine.
That'd be better. And are you gonna put those same lights on this new sign?
Yeah, yep, it would make sense to do. If you guys are cool with it. If you're not cool with it, I won't do it.
No, downward facing would be fine. The last thing is, the code calls for your street address to be on the sign also.
Yeah, we can do that.
That's all I.
Yes, yes. So we do want to add a condition that if Adam release with NACO, that the sign comes down. So,
Yeah, I worded that if there is a break in the lease agreement between the two property owners, then the ground sign is to be removed and the area to be reestablished and stabilized.
Okay, anyone in the audience, here, there, anywhere? Oh, yes, Adeline.
Just real quick, while we're thinking about sidewalks that go nowhere, I just want to make sure it's not in any right of way that could be potentially a future sidewalk.
no, it's far, it's
Beyond.
beyond, it's on the other side of the easement. Yeah, yep.
And the easement exists, that was created
The
back
easement is there, yeah.
when Adam built the facility.
If they were to develop that other lot at some point, would that impact the address on the sign?
The address is different than the business itself. It's,
So you're suggesting that the address that goes on this sign is for the lot at the top.
that's what the code says. That's what the code says. So 33 3333, State Route 64, whatever, that address should be on the sign.
That's okay. I'm okay with that.
And then the other one should have 3365.
365. Yeah, we can throw that up.
May not have been there when you got the original.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that would have gotten by Chris or anyone if it was, but we'll get it up there. No problem.
Thank you. That's all my.
Is it clear that the street address should be on the sign?
Do you want us to add that as a condition?
Yeah, I think.
Isn't that part of the
There's a
code?
lot of-
It is, it's part
So
of
it's part of
the
the
code, but.
Code requirements.
It's a code requirement.
D, yeah, number D for 11. I didn't never do that.
Well, it's for emergency services.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else from the audience? If not, let's go back to the board. This is a type 2 secret for the sign, and we're also looking at special use permit for the freestanding sign. We had a couple conditions, didn't we, Mr. Brega?
I added condition number 6, which is in regards to if there is a break in the lease agreement between the two properties. Then the ground sign is to be removed and the area reestablished and stabilized. That's number 6. The other 5 relate to standard SUP conditions.
Do we want to condition?
There's 9 through the 10, wasn't it?
That,
Next condition 10.
Yeah, it's at 6, so it's 10.
I thought it was 6.
I don't, what?
So like that
Right.
9
Back up a
condition.
little bit. I'm looking
You're
at,
looking at the findings,
Findings.
Mark.
Sorry.
You're right.
Yeah.
so, no, you're fine. So that would be the 6th condition. If the board wants to add that condition on this address to be added to the sign, but that's code required.
So that's number 5. It's
Correct.
covered in 5.
In my opinion, it is, but that's up to the board.
And Mark,
Those in the notes.
and I haven't testified.
Right.
Yep.
All right.
I'll check it.
Of course you will. Walk around with your cider.
When you go for your cider?
Yeah.
All right, further questions, concerns? If not, we're bundling the seeker and the special use. For the record, John. Yeah,
I'll make a motion.
I was just say, just like riding a bike, right, John?
I'll make a motion to accept as a bundle plan, the site 2 seeker type 2 resolution on CPN 23-013 for special use permit at State Route 3333, State Route 64, and also the special use permit approval resolution for same CPN 23-013.
And I'll second that.
A motion second, discussion. Full favor?
Hi.
None? Motion carries. Go hang your sign, Adam.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Do you need your?
Say thank you to Lula. Say thank you. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, our next applicant is for a new site plan, CPN 23001, Professional Engineering Group, represented by Scott Harder. He is representing Nancy Sands on her property at 5019 Westlake Road, County Route 16, requesting a single stage site plan approval for interior, exterior renovations and improvements. The exterior improvements to include a renovated pool area with a pool plus expansion of courtyard area and residence. Someone at the podium, your name and address.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board. My name is Rob Brenner. I'm an attorney with Mahoney Brenner LLP in Canandaigua 83 South Main Street. With me this evening are a few folks on our team. First and foremost is Scott Harder, who submitted the application. He's the professional engineer on the project. We've also got David Hamlin, who's the architect on the project, and Dan Hackett, who is the landscape architect on the project. I'm going to turn it over to each of the 3 disciplines to talk through their portion of the project. Scott and I will go last, address any technical engineering questions that you have. I know we submitted a response letter to the MRB comments. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Mr. Hanlon to come up and go over the architectural changes that were proposed, and then Mr. Hackett will go over the landscaping changes that are proposed on the exterior of the property. I also want to add that we did obtain the lakeside setback variance from the zoning board of appeals in March. So we're here before you this evening asking for a final approval to allow the project to proceed. Thank you.
Members of the board, David Hanlon Architects representing the applicant. Up on the screen is the site plan, which shows the footprint of the building and improvements to the site, pool, area. But what I'll do is I'll just quickly go over the architectural side of the project, and then Dan and Scott can talk to the site. I think we sent in renderings. If they're not available, I've got hard copies here as well. What I was going to talk about is the improvements to the structure. We're adding on a bit to the lakeside, and then increase or adding a couple rooms on the top so that it has more of a shingle style design to it. Classic lakefront architecture. So the footprint is fairly similar to what's there today. But the facade, the wall facing the lake has been improved to what you see there. The wing to the left, that's the guest wing that was added a few years ago. And so between that and the improvements to the facade that we're dealing with, in between that is the pool paved area, hardscaped area that you can see. So for our part, there's really not a significant change to the footprint. So the architecture isn't something that really is impacting the site as we're improving as much as the site goes. And so for that, I'll let Dan talk more about the site improvements. But if there's any questions you have before that, regards to the architecture, or roof lines, materials, or anything like that, be happy to answer any of your questions.
Do you do the driveway on the other side of the house also?
Yeah, so the driveway's been affected on the other side, just to add a few parking spaces. On the other side, the only change in the architecture is there's a one-story roof element at the entrance. We're bringing the front door out about 8 or 10 feet, but that's under the existing roof, so there's no real change to the road side.
We use the same kind of pavers that are there now.
Yeah, I think that's something Dan can speak to.
And one last question about that driveway. I saw that the septic system is close to that. Is there any requirement to stay away from that so far on your application?
So that, again, I'll turn over to Dan and Scott, unless anybody has any architecture questions. Come back up.
Good evening, Dan Hackett, landscape architect. Just go over a quick synopsis of the project, explain what's going on. If we go to the color rendering, then we can switch to the site plan, and I can talk about that a little also. I'm a lakeside of the house, and one of the things the board would like to know about are the shoreline guidelines and how we got to all this. So what we did was we kept the pool as tight to the home as we could. We worked with the existing elevations. The elevation currently drops down. What we've done is that is elevated up. Then we drop that lower patio down. That stone wall will be reminiscent of the steps and the stone that's on the house. So we fully integrated into the landscape rather than take the soil and push it out and change the grading significantly. The grading is very, very low profile. If I can point, you can see everything has been set up through spot elevations for the patio. Everything will go to the beds. The beds are raised. Underneath there is clear angular stone, and that's our infiltration. All the patios go into those infiltration chambers, and then our contours tie neatly back in. It's not to have it sticking up out of the air. As far as the plant materials that were used, we used plant materials that exist on the site to stay consistent with what is there. There are native materials on the site. I know that that was a question that came up, and I think that was addressed in the letter sent back to the board. There's some elements like the Japanese maple is an existing tree that was actually a gift to them, and we're going to dig that up and move it again. So although they're, you're seeing boxwood, and people said, oh, these aren't native. These are not invasive plants. And native and invasive You know, they're kind of two different things. So it's to explain that, and it's to keep a contextual character of the house. The house is flanked on the south by a very long point that comes out. And on the north, then you have that intermittent stream that comes out quite a bit too. Both sides are very wooded. In the front of the house, there are existing trees, which we're showing that are large canopy trees. And similar to when the guest house was redone a few years ago, and we came into the board, those are all existing trees that were there then. We plan on keeping that the same. It frames the house, but it also breaks up that view and softens it, compounded by the actual topography sticking out and its code coming in. In the Lakeshore guidelines, if you read them, there was a sentence written, and again, you start to pontificate, we all do that, and I probably did that too much, but simply, we're using the existing trees, the woods that are there, and that in frames and follows those guidelines is listed by the town of Canandaigua in their handout of what they look for. With the driveway in the front, you had just answered, asked the question. The one thing they need is this, they're a very active, large family, it's multi-generational. And the additional parking area, the last time we did redid the guest house to the south, there was a temporary parking set up. And if you've been down there, the Cobble Drive is pretty small, it's pretty tight coming in. And there's just not enough room with a multi-generational family. So the question was asked, can we extend that parking? And when we looked at that, it was the idea, and on the drawings, is to take the cobble that's there. This time the cobble put in will be an infiltration. That cobble, when it's put in, it has a consistency of a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch grout joint. That grout joint is filled with a granite chip. The granite chip is permeable. Underneath that, then the application is not crushed stone. It is all clear angular stone. Clear angular stone has a void capacity of 40%. So what we're electing to do is take all of that water, put it into that infiltration under the driveway to allow it to infiltrate. Scott can talk to the engineering of it and the storm size that is sized for. Scott came up with some math on his, that he's 12 inches, my specification for what's happening there. This is gonna be an 18-inch permeable base. Again, we're about 3 times over the threshold where we need to be. So the temporary drive that comes into the south will be raised at the end and turned back into lawn as shown on Scott's plan. And the general aesthetic of the house will be consistent with what's there now. And that's what we were trying to do, was not change it. I guess as an overview, that's where I'm at, and I'd like to open it up to any questions to the board.
You looked at me.
It's okay.
Dan, I do have a question though.
Sure.
You don't show it on the plan, but there's a hot tub there, right? Is that gonna stay or is that gonna go?
I'm sorry. I showed this just as existing patio.
Yeah.
Okay, so the hot tub will be lifted out for construction.
Okay.
And that construction drive has to come in. Your arborvitae that are there
Mhm.
are gonna be transplanted in nursery on site. Then that's all going to be put back in and reestablished. So this will remain, and we will tie back into that patio, yes.
Can you talk to, there's 2 drains that are coming out of there. Do you know what those drain? There's like a 2-inch poly pipe and a 4-inch. I figured one of them went by the roof drain, but the 2-inch poly coming out of there questioned me because of the draining of a pool, which was my next question.
No, I think that pile, it's black pile.
Yeah, it is.
It's an old irrigation line.
Is it?
And that was wooded, and I think it's an abandoned irrigation line, is what you're talking about. And I, now that you're saying that, it's clicking in my head. It's about a 1-inch.
Yeah, it's about 2 inches.
Is it? And again, I think what you saw down on that side was when this guest house got razed, and the new one got put up, the irrigation system was redone. And I think that's the old line that's down there. So, in fact, I know it is now that you said that. So, yeah. And you had a 2-part question.
The new pool's not gonna be drained. How is it gonna be drained if you have to drain it?
Again, we could talk to Scott about that, but what would happen is it's gonna have to be for the variance, they ask the same question.
The ECB asked the same question.
It has to be drained and taken out. It cannot be put
Drained.
into the lake or discharged across the lawn. Correct.
Thanks.
Questions on the landscape?
So the shoreline guidelines, I think you enumerate those from the other plan on the site plan, I believe.
I believe that Scott lifted my
Right.
guidelines and I wrote them here. They were also, I believe, typed up and put in on the application. What I tried to do is get to the sort of cliff notes of it, of that because of the large trees that exist, the woods to either side, the cove coming in, and we're creating where those trees are coming in, it's creating pockets to see that house, but it's not like we're coming out and shooting all these woods out and this, and hey, look at me. So if you've ever been on the lake and seen the house, it's a pretty unique site just because of the way it is so encapsulated, and it's a very protected. It's really almost idyllic to what you show in your book of what you want for those shoreline guidelines. So I think we're very consistent with that.
The Japanese maple you said has been moved, and are there any trees in distress that have to come down or?
No, actually, they keep up a pretty aggressive plan with an arborist. Things are pruned, climbers get up in the trees in deadwood. Everything is injected and fertilized on a yearly basis. The Sands family in general really love their trees. They don't try to take them down unless they have to.
All right, let's talk about the site plan, Scott, if you're ready.
Thank you, by the way.
Hello, everyone. I'm Scott Harder. I'm the engineer for the project. I was also involved in the 2018 remodel, of which this is somewhat a continuation. During that time, we upgraded the wastewater system and many items on the site. Now we have an extension or an expansion of that to include the patio in the pool and a slight increase to the footprint of the house, as David mentioned. I prepared, well, I received a review letter from MRB last Thursday night, and I was able to come up with a response letter, and I just finished sending out the revised plans this afternoon about 4:30. I don't think Lance has had a chance to review all that yet. But
I have.
Oh, did you really?
I think you've addressed all of our comments as it relates to our comment letter that we issued, so I appreciate the response. Yes.
Good, I wasn't sure.
No,
I wasn't sure if
I
I
looked
would
at
make
it
it.
today.
So I understand there was a question about the wastewater system, probably there's a question about that.
Is there like hardscape next to that wastewater? Is it a problem, or how far away do you have to be? It's always gonna be kind of close to the sewage.
Those items that we're close to are items that are used to pump the wastewater under the road.
Like,
We are within a few feet, but if anything, well, actually, we're probably 5 to 10 feet. But I think that actually helps in terms of service for the aeration treatment unit and the food treatment unit. So
I was just wondering, there was no mention to it as being septic back there, so I was wondering if you're.
once upon a time, the septic system did exist where the expanded courtyard is proposed. That's been eliminated in favor of where you see it up on the hillside. So we have that area available for the reasons that Dan mentioned.
Leave that, no, leave that.
Thanks, Joe.
So yes, if I can point to it. I believe the area you're talking about is over here, right?
Correct.
Yep, so we have a pre-treatment tank and aeration treatment unit and a pump tank. Shoot the wastewater under the road.
Sure.
Any other questions I might be able to answer?
That driveway and parking area, in the courtyard, I guess, that's, yeah, it said the residents need more room to park for family events. And that is a driveway that comes down there.
Well, we're calling it an access way, I guess, after construction. It's the route in to perform the construction that's needed. And it was judged to at least maintain it too long.
Can I help with this just to address your question? Because this question came up last time. So the parking area would be this. There is the fishtail he's showing is very long. The fishtail comes back and stops, and then the walkway that is hooked into it to walk out. So in essence, from my hand up is what remains. Everything else is removed. After construction, correct. Is that address what you, okay, well, sorry, Scott.
I'm getting around to it. I think you mentioned, Scott, there is a slight increase in flood coverage.
Right.
And that was a concern of the ECB and it's a concern of mine as to what requirements you have regarding managing that additional runoff. I think you mentioned the permeable stone is one way. Are you looking at any other type of rain gardens or anything? There's no room, I guess.
Well, there isn't really room, but I think given the spec the dam wants to implement with the cobbles, I think that's a really good solution. And if we use the stone that he mentions, we have the ability to hold a 3 to 4 inch storm within that open area, that open stone area. So I think that's a good benefit to what we're doing. This isn't an asphalt driveway, for example, where we wouldn't have that opportunity.
This is in the scenic view shed. Just so to make sure that if there's any issues that we have to address with that, the lot is existing, so it's not creating a lot. I think as long as we feel comfortable with the shoreline protection that's being provided, that would help the aesthetics. Floodplain, you had asked for the actual elevation plans, if I recall, in your review, and I assume they've been provided in the
They've been added to the
plan, as well as the high water mark.
We actually do show them on our drawing.
In the upland, that's to remain as is.
As is.
Board, any questions, concerns?
No.
I think you hit most of the points, Chuck. The only question that I did have is that stream that is next to it was determined not to be a stream.
Because of the
The
property.
zoning board of appeals interpreted that as this is not a stream. That's specific to that application, and they made that as a condition of that approval. That was specific to that property.
Yeah, I just noticed that so I've been on this property 3 times in the past year, and every time there's water, not stream.
That is a blue line, not stream.
Why not stream?
That was my,
Interesting.
yeah, didn't agree with my determination.
Anything else, board?
Not adding anything else to that north side.
Anybody in the general public?
I have a question about height, if I could just make a comment. See, on the ZLD, it doesn't reference height, but on the plans, it says height is 29 feet, and I understand there's a comment there that matches the existing. Right. But what I don't know is if there was a variance granted for that, or if this is the expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming situation. You know about the roof height, Dave?
We are going to the existing ridge that runs the length of the house. We are holding that ridge and not going past it.
Same height, but if there's not a variance, then I don't know how it would be for the expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming structure.
I don't know for sure, just something for the wheelhouse of thought. I know the house was built, I think 25 years ago. And at that time, I was not part of those approvals, so I'm speculating, but I believe that the town was then using an average height. And that average was calculated. When this project was built 25 years ago, it was under tremendous scrutiny. It was a big house going in. And again, I was not involved in that approval process, but I remember it quite well. So that's why I'm speaking to the board about it. There were 3 cottages removed as part of this when it was done. And at that time, everything was code compliant. And the reason I bring that up is I got involved after those approvals. And there is a retaining wall at the lake. And when we came in a few years ago to have the guest house raised and redone, it was said by Chris Jensen that they had an illegal wall of the lake. And at that time, I was able to produce the facts because I was involved in that. And Ernie Patsky had actually done that after their approvals for that process. He got the approval to put the lake in and sent in the original facts 5 years ago. So although your question has great validity to it, I think that the board needs to look back at that time. And I think it was done by averaging. So Dave, being the architect now, and it was a different architect then, comes on and we have an established height of what happened then. And the proposal is to stay at that and below it. And I hope that helps address the, question to the board.
Well, it still would be the average finished grade, that's the way we calculate it, but if there was no variance, it would still be the expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming structure.
Is it an expansion if we're not increasing it?
But you are increasing.
Not the height.
footprint, but you're increasing the structure, it's the expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming structure.
But we're staying within the allowable.
I know that you're expanding the structure.
Non-conformity is the height, though, right? Is that not right?
Well,
Yeah,
but
the footprint is okay.
It's not height.
yeah, but you're expanding it because pre-existing non-conforming structures don't get to remain indefinitely. And so.
But
if
how
you're
do you know
expanding-
that it's,
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm asking the question, because if there's a variance, then it's a moot point, but I just don't know sitting here tonight.
but if they did it by average, Dave's not averaging it, he's taking it from the back. So I think the question, Dave, is when you looked at the height, did you do an average of all the profiling on the house? Or are you establishing that height based on a point that you took at another location?
No, we're going to the existing bridge that's there today. That's the established height, current height.
But you didn't do an average around the house right now. Because that, if you did an average, that height, the average may be lower than the 29. It depends on the point that you
That's
measure
true.
from.
I would have to get you that number.
So when you put together the average, I'm sure at that time, if it was 29, there were some 22s in there, and there's a 26 and a 24, and they were doing an averaging system at the town then to get to that 25. So it's a little bit of a trick question, and that's why I'm asking you and trying to clarify with the board that I'm sure that that averaged that height at that time. That's what I would guess. So
Can we say that the height is no greater than 25 feet? And whether it's, I think the code does allow for averaging, I believe.
yeah,
We do it all the time.
So
Yes.
if you can provide documentation that the average is 25 feet. And that's, I think, solves the problem. So if you're
No,
22 here and 29 here.
Yep, yep.
You might be 25 or less.
Yeah, I guess I would just still hold on to it, and I guess, Rob, this is a legal question. It has never been brought as an issue that as long as we're maintaining the condition, or pre-existing condition, we're not increasing it. It's always been allowed in the past. As the footprint is not non-conforming, we're not making that increase in any non-conformance in the footprint.
Was that assuming that the original house had a variance in the first place? I don't know. And I guess that's what Doug's question is.
There'd be one or two.
Did the
things.
original house have a variance, or was it based on an averaging that?
It either had a variance or it was based on the averaging. And I think that Dave's label is from a point in space. But I can assure this board that this scrutiny that job was under at that time, if it was 25 feet, either a variance was granted. Or the averaging as it was given to the planning board when they approved it then was 25 feet. So I think Dave's contention was, hey, this is approved, it's always been there. In our heads, it was never a non-conforming structure, so it's kind of a trick question based on what he did a labeling on as a point in space, and
Yes, right, the
that
29
is
foot,
is what I'm trying to drive at.
the 29 foot could be taken at the most extreme point. where the
I
grade
think for
goes.
the purpose of our deliberations tonight, I think as long as we make a blanket statement that the height be no greater than 25 feet on the mean or the average, or, yeah.
Yeah, if I could, maybe just suggest that the height is in compliance with code requirements, right? And then we can work with staff separately to see if there was a variance granted or talk through the averaging. I don't want to be tied to a condition about averaging if there was a variance. There may well not be. And Doug's point is well taken. You know, I think it's interesting. It's an interesting academic question because the nonconformity is the height, right? And Doug's point is, are you expanding the nonconformity by making the building bigger? Well, that becomes interesting when you're talking about height versus footprint, right? It'd be very easy if we were expanding footprint, but we're not. The height is the height, right? We're not increasing the height just because we're increasing the plane at which there's a height. I'm not sure that that's an expansion.
You are doing that bump out
By the
there.
kitchen.
One-
Right, but the footprint itself is still within conformance.
Does he bump out the exterior or interior renovations that you're making? Is that affected by the 29?
So it's similar to if we had a side yard setback, and this goes to the point, was there variance? If you had a side yard setback variance to a house that was granted, 5 years later, you wanted to add on to it in the other direction, still within the footprint allowance. You're not increasing the non-conformance, or you're allowed to do that action, because nobody's gonna tell you have to take down the part that had variance. That I didn't explain it legally, as well as Rob.
Yeah. You know, in some circles, they say you can't increase a non-conformity. But, all right, well, Rob, I appreciate the condition that you mentioned. I think we can go with that.
And we'll work with staff to make sure that we're in compliance, and if there's any issues, we can work through them.
And we would check the plans prior to. Well, prior to the building.
The height of the house is to not exceed the town code requirements. Documentation is to be provided to the town CEO prior to the plans and sign violations. The building permit will be conferred.
It's being adjudicated here, why don't you make it prior to the sun?
Mike, can you read it again?
I have the height of the house is not to exceed the town code requirements. And documentation is to be provided to the town CEO prior to plans being signed.
If you leave it like that, the town code requirement is 25 feet. And it's more than that. So it would be basically not exceeding non. Thank you. So you write that like that, and then you have to stay with it.
So what I say, the average of the house, the height of the house is not to exceed the town code requirements.
Your average.
The height of the house.
Yeah.
Which we would need to.
And I still have documentation is to be provided to the town.
I could, or if you could add, unless there's a variance, we don't know, we might find out. If the
Yeah, I think
variance
that's
is
part of the
there,
research
Right.
they're gonna do,
Yeah,
to see if it's in compliance, either in compliance because it was a variance and it's, you know, non-conforming.
yeah, if I could be so bold to suggest simpler language, maybe just say that confirmation that the proposed modifications are in conformity with the height requirements in the town code, right? So that encapsulates whether there's a variance, it's pre-existing non-conformity, whether it's averaging. If we just keep it generic, that gives us some leverage to work through that.
Got that one. Is that okay with the board?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one more thing?
All right, we were at.
One more thing, the water course of the town board at their last meeting actually did change the definition of water course. So just want to make sure that we're in compliance with the new law.
Let's see, stream.
So it says a stream, gully, or other body of water identified by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation on official mapping or on County of Canandaigua maps, which are available in the town development office. So it's specifically in terms of setbacks, I know you were at the zoning board. This was a change. No structure shall be built within 100 feet of the bed of a water course. And I apologize, but the ZOD just didn't reference, so I wasn't sure.
Doug, being that the zoning board determined that this particular stream is not a stream, does that have any weight in the code?
And so, I mean, it's a legal question, but the town board, the March town board meeting changed the code to define water course. And so it eliminated that whole thing that was the ambiguity relative
Right,
to the
6
stream
months out of the
carrying
year.
water, so that's all gone.
Well, is this or isn't it class C stream?
So it shows up on
So-
the board as a blue line.
It is a class C stream.
Oh, it is.
So the question I have, is that we have a pre-existing condition. Now we're talking like setback, right?
So back from
Yes.
So there's a pre-existing condition that what's going on here is less than what the condition is now. I'm just not sure how we got to this with filing in January and something happened last week and we went to the zoning board. And now we're talking about stream setbacks. It's a little confusing to our process, so I'm not sure how we're there with this application. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, Rob, you,
Look, to say what Dan said, maybe a little more directly, we submitted the application, it was reviewed by staff, correctly reviewed by staff. Required approvals were identified, we've pursued them. We're in front of this board tonight for single stage site plan approval, that's all we're asking for. We're not asking for adjudication on variances, interpretations of code, we're asking for site plan approval.
Where's the stream? Is that just stream up there?
That's right.
On the side?
Just to clarify, this is the stream that we discussed with the neighbors to the north that are building, tearing down the 2 cottages and zoning. And that's one of those-
Shepherd Burke.
that was one of those determined after some investigation that's not a stream.
Not,
That was,
Five year old
that
definition.
was the zoning board's determination for that project specifically.
So the house is not conforming. In terms of
Correct.
setback. current,
Yes,
right?
it is. That's not-
To the new code, right?
No.
This is in the old code
too.
too. I think the old code was when they had
It
a
wasn't-
6-month flow.
Yeah, it
I think it
wouldn't
was
have
agreed
met.
that-
So, yeah, it didn't, it was pre-existing.
Are the improvements within 100 feet of the stream?
I don't know.
And that's my question.
Oh,
Yeah, but this was already paid. This is probably. Yeah, this is existing.
So if I could point for you, this is the garage here, which comes the closest point to the
That's
street.
already
Yep.
there.
This is here, all the way back to here, all the way back here. We're filling in this piece right here.
the part that's farthest away from the stream. But this also here exists, and here's the stream here, so the addition we're putting is here, which is less than 100 feet away, but much more than what's already existing.
But what I'm saying is this is already concrete.
This is also.
Yeah,
yes,
this
it's
is
a-
also
so
already
the structure,
considered
those
a
exact
structure.
structure.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
That's already done.
Okay. Okay.
And the improvements on the other side, the pool, patio, that's. That's more than.
Yes.
That's correct. So in
So it's,
terms of what applies to this application, it's all.
it doesn't apply. The changes don't apply.
Isn't there another street on this side?
It is, it's further. More than 100.
There's a house in between.
On the south side, yeah, there's actually woods, a house and a stream on the other side of their house. Yeah.
So I don't hear it's a
Because
non-issue.
that scale right there is 90.
90 feet.
And then go boom, and then
South.
yeah. The other one, there are.
All righty, anybody else from the audience? Okay, board deliberations. How do we feel? Check to make sure. Chris Jensen did have a couple comments regarding the survey, existing conditions plan. I think it's been taken care of with the, I think you put the survey on the, showing the uplands on another part of the plan. You have the condition about the note of the variance that was granted. You put on the site plan.
I have it in our comment letter. I had it in our comment letter.
There's no MRI features that will be affected. We designated floodplain, we fixing the high water table. We're not affecting any woodlands or things of that degree. So, the county planning board was not required to be contacted. So no comments from them. We discussed ECB. Okay, we talked about stormwater runoff. We talked a little bit about the species of plants. Kim, did you heard the discussion regarding the invasive versus not native, non-native?
And I will say there's a boxwood blight and there are some problems that we need.
Oh, no.
Boxwood blight? They may want to look at that.
Guys hear that?
That's what keeps me in business, then, because I can just keep taking care of them. No, we do know that.
You started it.
They do trees, so I,
All right.
thank you.
Okay, I think we've beaten this enough. Any further comments? If not, we've got a type 2 seeker. Let's do it separate. I'll make a motion that we consider a resolution to consider this a type 2 seeker action. Therefore, this board does not have to do any further review under seeker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, someone want to take the site plan?
I will. I'll make a motion to approve the single stage site plan approval 23001 with, I believe we added one condition, so that would be a total of 7. conditions.
Right,
I'll second.
Seventh is the height issue.
7 is the
Yes.
height, right? Yep. I'll second.
Okay, further discussion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Okay, we're doing some deja vus here. First one being CPN 23-007 bond. Anthony Bond. For 5131 Silverdale. Requested a reapproval of single stage site plan approval for construction of a new home down the hill from Silverdale.
Correct, this was, this project was approved about 2 years ago, and everything that kind of happened with construction, will pause construction for a considerable amount of time. Everything kind of wore out, and we're back to getting the approval from the board. As far as the site goes, an overview, it is a long, narrow flag lot up at the top of Silverdale Drive that comes off of dead end. So comes down, there is an existing lane there that will be improved. We're gonna come down, we'll split off to a lower barn. So we'll have a driveway, stormwater ditch on the upper side to take water off the road. And then the main driveway, will continue down to the house will be a two-story with a walkout. On-site wastewater, we kind of went back and forth with the county, trying to get the county to let us pump it out to the road, the manhole, but they wouldn't want to do it. So we did the stormwater, or we did a on-site wastewater treatment. Tyler over the county is still reviewing it. He's in the process of working with Bill to make sure all the sizing and everything's appropriate. There was a couple things that happened during the approval process with some removal of trees. The board did go through that with the applicant to kind of go through the process of kind of rewooding the area down the road. All the stabilization has occurred, so it's all grass now. There's no open areas, so that's all been done. The only thing that hasn't been done that was kind of gone through the board was the planting of the saplings and the trees that were needed for kind of rewooding that area. The applicant is fully going to do that. We just want to make sure that we get it done when it's more of the landscaping area of this instead of doing it right now. Kind of getting machines in there, tearing it all up before we get started. So if there's any questions.
Oh, yeah, we have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Anthony, how long are you estimating your driveway?
The driveway is 1,400 feet.
Yeah, I measured it at 13. So for 14, according to the fire code, you have one pull off.
We have one pull off.
You need another one.
Okay, we can have.
Every 500 feet, you're gonna have to have one. So you need one more. Your house is a turnaround. And I think there's room in the barn for turnaround.
Yeah, there's kind of where we were kind of assuming that if something happened, you could kind of pull down this, and that's kind of a pull off as well, instead of having to. There's not a lot of room on there because it's narrow, so we were able to fit one in here, and we were gonna kind of use that as a pull off, and then there's, because of the width of the driveway, the garage is so wide, it kind of gives a lot more space to stage and kind of emergency vehicles that we have.
You'll add another one. Driveway is gonna be 12 feet, right?
Yeah.
How high is your home gonna be?
The house is under the 35. I could add a note to that. So
Please, yeah, I tried
it's,
to-
it's a little bit up there, but with all the grading and everything, yeah.
Yeah.
We can add a note to that.
I didn't see it, but did you have retaining wall plans or details?
There's not a detail on that because it's kind of a short little stone wall, but I can talk to the applicant. We can get some sort of.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
We can get some sort of little.
You doing anything behind the house? I saw it's all grass now. It's just.
Nothing behind the house as of right now. It's just the house with the drive.
Yeah.
And kind of the courtyard area. The septic's gonna be on the front, and then we're just grading, we're just trying to get this in, get it going. But no plans. The only other plan is the driveway down to the barn.
You pavement or gravel? Gravel. Just make sure it's up to the standard of the fire department.
Yeah, it'll do that. And I don't think there's any kind of issue with the apron because it's at the dead end of Silverdale, so. It kind of goes to a paved and then it cuts off. So
Yeah, that was another question I had. Is like 3 flag lots there. And it looks like 2 houses are utilizing the same drive. Will you use the same? Or you're not, when I walked it,
If you zoom in,
I
there's
walk
like,
down
it kind of comes in, so in order to get to it, there's like a little section there, and
Yeah.
then it peels off, and then there's a flag lot, they have that, this.
Right.
width here, the whole width is our private right away.
So is there an agreement between those?
There
residents?
is, there's a deed agreement, which I can provide.
Okay, that'd be great. if you could. This is understood.
That's part of the. That's 20.
Yeah, we gave that to them.
No. A lot of deer back there, I'll tell you that.
That's what.
It is Mexican.
So, not to sound ignorant, but I didn't go down there. Is the house built?
House not, nothing's. been
Oh,
done.
oh, oh, I
So,
thought you were
so
talking
what
about the
happened
house.
was,
No.
everything kind of came, we got the approval, the building permit was never pulled because everybody knows how construction costs skyrocketed right during that approval process. So the only thing was done was a little bit of grading and then that clearing. So that's been seeded, stabilized,
Well,
everything's back to where it was, minus obviously the trees, but there's no structure on the site.
Removal of trees, brought you back here.
Correct,
Right.
correct, and then
Right.
Dan Hackett came up with that.
And Ted Collins.
Yeah.
That's
I think
what's
the
there.
Collins plan was the one
Yeah, that was Dan Hackett with Ted Collins.
that you went with.
Yeah. And he came, there's, I think the town has, it, there's like.
Was the barn part of the original?
Yes, everything is the same. So
Okay.
we're not, the only thing, like I said, is this is no longer an area of disturbance at this point. Because it's been stabilized.
So your limits of disturbance have been reduced.
They'll be reduced to
4 acres.
basically just the barn and the house, and it's the non-site, but this area here now is stabilized. And when we go in there to plant, it's just gonna be, they're smaller plantings, so we're not really gonna have a lot of. Tearing. And the real lawn's just
And
maintained.
he's gonna follow that tech on plan.
Yes, that's
outside,
the plan.
all
We're gonna
that
try to
stuff.
use some of the smaller saplings around the area to kind of transplant. It's basically, it's 3 or 4 different species.
Yeah, I really do.
What's there now?
You're using the same road that's there now for that barn?
Yeah, that kind of cut that was in there, yeah, it's gonna follow the same path. It'll just be gravel and stabilized, and all the steeper than 301 slopes will have an erosion control blanket that kind of protects it with a steep slope mix. So we would actually do that.
Does the board think that a landscape surety is needed for those trees? For the trees, I mean, seeing how. We've been looking for the trees and it's
Yeah.
taken 3 years to do it. I think it would be a good idea.
And, yeah, and that they follow the plan that was provided that we agreed to.
Anything else?
Any agreement.
We did get a letter
Your
from
steep
them.
slopes, I think you showed those on a
Yeah,
separate plan.
There is a total thing. We did get a letter from MRV on Friday. There weren't many things. There was a turn off. And the it's on-site water treatment. There's just a couple things. They'll be addressed.
You said Bill Groves working on the.
Yeah, and Tyler and Bill are working together just to make sure the sites. are correct.
So it would be a commission.
Yeah, Lance and I talked about it. We were gonna do a condition based on the separate being approved before we can see it. Instead of what we use.
You bring in power in all aerial, with one telephone pole I saw down there.
There's a pole there, but they'll probably go underground. as far as they can. That's up to Archie. Whenever I try to propose something, it's always something else.
Your house architecture is the same as what they had proposed before, the exact same thing with the deck coming up.
Yeah, nothing's changed really.
Nice.
The ECB mentioned the steep slopes. Staying out of those for the most part. They were on board with the reforestation plan. Lance, we talked about the need for a landscape surety. We're going to require that to make sure that those trees get put in this thing.
So what if I can either add it separately, or what if we added the condition, or if I would just say,
And
and.
Second pull off, got that? Lead on the driveway.
I did have it in MRB's letter. I'm most-
Oh, okay.
We can add it. I had the fire code compliance.
You got it covered
I believe
in
we
one of
did.
the reviews. Station. Sewer. Jim Fletcher, he had something about the water meter. Did you see his comment?
Yeah.
I think you have it in the.
Yes, and the size.
Yeah.
Usually there's a comment on the size.
So I have the
Size
highway
of the
water
house, yeah, it's upgraded. Whatever your size.
Let me see if I specified it in findings. It says on sheet C1, a water meter vault must be installed if the length is over 500 feet. And the water details place the following meter vault. And then he gave you the part number. Did you receive his comments? We can find.
They might have been like old ones. we just-
They might have.
You can just send them.
Yeah, I'll make sure
February
the town
10th.
staff for us too.
February 10th is the day's correspondence.
Yeah, I don't think it-
Someone sends me a letter to the town. They post it.
Because there was nothing in the MRV county.
Nothing like that.
And one other thing, Jim mentioned that I guess Silver Nails on the paving program for this year. And you're going up into that stub, get in, get the water. So he was just wondering if any work that's done in the street could be done prior to the paving.
Yeah, as long as we get the twin ones, don't worry about it. There's really nothing else. The first stage is gonna be, getting the driveway stabilized, so we can get construction equipment in and out of there, and once you stabilize it, we're gonna be working on either side of the driveway to get the utilities through. That'll be kind of one of the first stages.
Did we include the easement agreement for the shared driveway or?
I don't have that as a condition.
Yeah, I think.
Provided, yeah.
If you.
Yeah,
if you give it to us
it's in
before,
the deed, so I'll find it.
give it to us again. Make sure it provides for the hows and wheres of the driveway maintenance. All right. Scenic view shed. I think it is in the scenic view shed, which is a new animal since the first time you were here. I believe so, yeah. Well, if we get the trees that we requested, the reforestation. Anything else? It's in the SBO.
Oh, no, I know, but in terms of requirements,
Yeah, I think the most you can do is the lot size.
the lot size is good.
Oh, the lot size is there, yeah.
The materials in the whole.
Actual original.
No,
No, it's below the other four homes that are up there from.
Board have any concerns there? At all on the SBO?
I didn't.
All right, at least we talked about it. Trust it. Okay, I think we're gonna move on. Anybody in the audience? Anybody at virtual land want to address the board regarding this application? If not, let's proceed. And I'll look for that bundle for type 2 and sleep.
I'll make the motion to approve a bundle plan, seeker resolution type 2 action at 5131 Silver Nail Drive on CPN 23-007. For the approval and also site plan approval resolution same area.
7 conditions.
Thank you.
With a modification of number 5 to include landscape. 6 being a no edit to the plan specified by the house. And the 7th regarding the shared driveway easement such agreement to be provided prior to signatures.
I'll second.
Motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Yep. Get her done this time. All righty. The room's thinning out. Yeah. All right, next one is CPN 23014. John Bernuzzi, representing the, I believe, the Gerber family. Who's also representing the Hollander Design. Owners of the property at 4476 County Route 16. Requesting a single state site plan approval for construction of a new single family residence. And Hollander.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
John's online, he's viewing tonight. This is our second site plan application, third time we've been in front of the board. Previously, we presented our shared access, which we constructed, and then last year we constructed the first lot, which is at the end of that shared access off of West Lake Road, lot 4. This is for lot 1, so the first lot to the left as you drive in our shared access. That access is has a HOA for maintenance and has been approved by the Attorney General, so we provide that for reference if that's needed. Our site is pretty straightforward in terms of utilities. They pull from West Lake Road, both the water and the electric and gas in a combined trench. Site served by a conventional septic system, which we're in the process of seeking approval from the watershed inspector. We previously, we had some comments regarding steep slopes, and the area that is greater than 15% is shown as a yellow transparency on this plan. We can see that with the exception of just the bottom right-hand corner as you pull into the site, there's no proposed features there. The site's clear of any steep slopes. So the location where the house is, the septic, all the site features are in the range of 10%. So they're not regulated steep slope areas. When we were constructing the access road, we had some comments from residents about storm water, and I can report that our strategy is working well. There is a diversion past the first culvert under West Lake Road. You can see it on the plan there. And that was at the request of Ontario County Highway to address a capacity issue at that culvert. And that's working well as we haven't had any issues with migration of stormwater into West Lake roads. We're across it. Certainly across it as well. We're happy with the way stormwater is working across the
I can verify that. I talked to the neighbor across the street and he said he hadn't had any water there. Up the street, yeah. That's
He was here. He
Yep.
was.
Yeah.
Talk about the access road.
Yeah.
And he liked to talk, but
He was a good guy.
yeah, the guy, but he said no water coming off there.
Ted?
I don't remember his name. I wrote it down.
Yeah, it's Hudson. It's
Yeah.
old minutes. Sure is.
Mr. Hudson, yes. And through the construction process, the access road, lot 4, we were able to handle much more difficult site conditions with the steepness of the grades. This project we expect will move towards smoothly. So happy to answer any questions.
Your site distance for your access road is working well. Yeah. No restrictions there.
See, you have a swell going right to that first drain on the road.
Would you like me to point to it?
This is a new swell. This is not a swell. I mean, it's just all.
Yes.
That's a new swell you're gonna put into that drain right here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because there's, and then all these trees you have here are gonna stay the Cedars, I believe, right here.
The cedars
That'll
will stay.
stabilize.
Yeah, the site had a lot of ash tree. And I can speak to the buckthorn, it's pretty thick. We've found that the ash trees are diseased and need to be removed. And definitely on that brushes of no value, so. The cedars will stay, though, yes.
That's what the neighbor was asking them to, and I saw that they were painted orange. I assume they were gonna stay.
The strategy with that, as well, that you just pointed out, is that it allows us to divert the bulk of the site past that first culvert, so that just brings that storm water past the problem area.
There's no setback numbers on your plan for side setbacks, front setbacks. I think you're close on the backside. You can put them on the final plans.
Are you referring to the zoning table? Because there's the envelope.
Yeah, we had,
So,
Oh,
yeah, he's got it.
I didn't see that.
And then the general notes, I have the.
Yeah,
table.
It's probably hard to see. Small,
It is.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, very good. All your drainage off the roofs are gonna go into singles or flat blocks or what?
Splash blocks, with the exception of where we have a proposed sidewalk to the front door. Can't really drop to the side to splash block there without a freezing problem. So we have a 4-inch tile that'll bring it to the bottom of the grade, and it'll disperse across the front lawn and roll into that same swell that we just talked about. The second location is at the back corner near the walkout. Kind of the same situation. I'll just point to one. Second location here. It's splash blocks right here at this check dam, and then the first location.
Yeah, so you will have a sidewalk, but you can show that on your plan.
Even, yeah.
Would that be block or?
I'll have to check with the builder. I expect it to be initially, their standard deliverable is a concrete block. But there may be more special than.
I don't think we require specific landscaping, but I know the ECB had mentioned well, you're asking your intent as far as landscaping around the house. Shrubs, bushes.
The applicant has, for the people who are building the house, want to replace those ash trees, and they've provided a sketch of their landscaping plan. I'd be happy to translate that into professional format and submit that to the town. It's primarily evergreen trees. I think they had a 12-foot height for starting. And there was an assortment of a dozen or so.
Yeah, I would think where the deck is, there have a walkout underneath. You probably want some sort of landscaping across it.
Yeah, in addition to the taller trees, there was also some plans for some lower lying greenery.
Yeah, it couldn't come over too far down south, maybe just in front of where the framing is. Yeah, if you could supply that landscape plan, have to appreciate it. And Lance, you feel this, you've checked the ENS controls.
yeah, I think
With the slopes we've got there.
Mr. DeHonder did provide a response letter. I did have a chance to go through that today. I also reviewed the revised plans. I believe, if not all of the MRB comments have been addressed, most of them have been.
Elevations of the home. Runoff that works, septic system. Tyler's looking at, talk about the driveway easement. You've got the P&R fee and the resolution. You don't have to take this application to the county planning board, so there's No response from them. Chris Jensen had no response. Kevin Mulvaney had no response. Anyone in the audience like to address this application? If not, does the board have any other questions?
I have a couple of corrections for the board's consideration.
Sure.
Under the suggested conditions, I had identified 6 and 7, one being code enforcement officers' comments, which there are none. That one, I believe, could be removed. Number 7, highway and water superintendent's comments, I believe that one could be removed as well. So 6 and 7, I think, can be removed from the suggested conditions.
Did we want to add in the landscape?
Correct, so I did add 2 new ones, so the total would be 8. Number 7 would be the proposed sidewalk to the house / front door as discussed at the TV meeting is to be shown on the site plans prior to signatures. And then 8 was the landscape plans to be provided and shown on the plans prior to signatures being affixed. There's a lot of plans in there. Ultimately, a landscape plan to be provided prior to signatures.
Someone's okay with that, they can make a motion.
Lance, was that, what were the 2 new ones?
Number 7 new is regarding the sidewalk to be shown. And number 8 is the landscape plan to be provided.
Did you just say 6 and 7 was deleted?
6 and
I
7.
I deleted 6 and 7.
So there's 7.
So there's 7.
5.
We just replaced.
No, there's a 6 on the back.
Oh.
Oh,
Sorry, I missed that.
that sneaky little one over there. Okay.
We have 8 total,
It was
Yes.
a -2.
6, 7, 8. Yes. Got it.
Like you said,
Got it.
You guys are just testing me. I
you
got
said 8 and then you deleted 6 and 7 and called them 7 and 8.
You knew 7, you knew 8.
Same page, same book.
Getting late,
We're
guys.
good.
Okay.
We got it all
Are
together,
we
guys.
bundling this?
Bundle.
Are we bundling this?
Yeah.
Someone understands.
I would like to move that we, the type
Please
2
make a motion.
for 23014 and with the 8 conditions, the new 8 conditions.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion from Scott, second by Amanda. Further discussion on this application? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. All right. Scott came back. He enjoys it here so much, right? All right, you are here representing an owner of property 4629 Westlake Road, the Ashes, requesting a single stage site plan approval. Again, an amended plan. And for the construction of a single family. Tell us what the changes are. A little tough to figure it out from the plan.
Right.
Is it just the front?
Well,
parking area?
our original landscape plan showed 4 pervious pavers in the driveway. And the owner elected not to propose in. So that's, Chris Jensen noticed that and indicated that because of that, we should come back and see it. So that's why we're here. To offset the benefit of pervious pavers, we did install, if you could flip to the next screen possible. We did install. Larger? Is this our most recent plan? This is the amended one?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
amended.
okay.
223 is yours.
Okay, so. let me sit there and see. We ended up taking the drainage from the front of the house, we routed it under the driveway and into a dry well to reduce the velocity of the flows coming, and then it goes into the rain garden, which was proposed on the landscape plan, which the owner does intend to install. So there is water treatment that's being provided. It's just not being provided through the pervious pavers as one might think. It's I think we're still being responsible. It's just that item has been not constructed. And if you go to the you go to the landscape plan, which I think might be the another sheet down. This is where the pervious pavers were first proposed. This is the rain garden. There is no dry well or buffer there. So when we got into this, we wanted to do something beneficial because that was not what the owner wanted to do after rethinking it. We put in the dry well, and this is in the process of being constructed.
Leader gravel, that's what.
That's what they want to do for now, and let it settle out for a while, yeah.
I talked to the owner the other day, just talking at home, that's what he said, he's gonna keep it gravel. I was impressed that you guys added that extra drainage up there in front of or near that, the old school. Church, yeah, that was additional that you added. He also mentioned that he is, and there was comments about the surfacing of the trail. That he was not gonna surface, he was just gonna leave the grass. Did you mention that to you at all?
No, that wasn't a word.
Yeah, that was on many comments that, you know, what is the surface of this trail gonna be? I read and I talked to him about it, and he said his plan was to leave it grass. So I don't know, just a thought from.
Just to be sure.
Trail cross sections right there at the bottom right. Pretty fertile lands.
Yeah, there is a trail and the woods did do a trail.
Wood chip.
That's what he said, if it did, it was gonna be wood chips, sort of like stair steps.
Yeah, there was a trail detail provided.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was comments I read through.
Just to be sure, there's a drain pipe on the south property line that comes out, that's not tied into this drainage system at all. So on the, what looks to be in the south part of the property line, there's a.
Let's go back up.
Yeah,
I didn't see it in the site plan, that's why I'm asking.
No.
So there's a drain that comes out.
There is a,
to daylight,
there is a pipe that comes under and daylights over
right about
here.
there, yeah.
And we're recommending that the pipe be reoriented so that it flows in the direction of the rain garden. So that's taking all the roof drainage and the drainage between the gutter and the front of the house and bringing it down that way.
Okay, so that pipe is tied into that, so you would redirect that to the rain garden.
Yes.
We should probably let your client know the stuff regarding the trail that he's gonna change it. Probably shouldn't change it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will tell him.
If the plan show, so which otherwise he's gotta come back and do another.
Yeah.
revision.
I don't think he wants to do that. Although we enjoy coming here a lot.
Original plan was some. Except the field. Coverage.
That was the only change.
Yeah, that was the only thing, yeah.
It's still permeable, it's just not wall.
And shoreline guidelines apply. To block the plan.
Yeah, I mean, the plan is only different in that we show the actual constructed condition of various structures, including the dispersal area, but the pervious areas and the other metrics haven't changed.
Yeah, remove the pervious. Compensated with the.
Retracted the stone wall.
Yep. Okay, anybody in the audience? Address the board regarding this application? Not. And the board has no further deliberations. Let's do it.
Another sequence for this?
So technically probably don't have to, but being as a type 2, I just figured, that they're coming back in, so. And it's a change to the plan, so technically you have to reevaluate that change.
Get people to see.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
We get it. All right, get someone bundle the book.
Well, no. So for 23-021, we'll bundle the seeker type 2. We'll bundle it and bundle it and bundle it with the amended single stage site plan approval with the 9 conditions as listed, no
Just want to clarify,
modifications.
yeah, you might want to mod number 8, says the material of the proposed nature trails is shown on the plan.
It
It's showing
is.
it, so.
Yep.
maybe you can move
So we
them.
can drop that, go to 8,
8.
because I know how to turn a page and look at the other conditions. Okay, with 8.
I'll second.
Scott?
Thank you. That motion is second.
Scott, Carter?
Anybody else have any questions, concerns? If not, we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
We're done. You're
Yeah, you're done.
Now you're done.
Now you are.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Well, I'm like, keep talking.
All right. Clear to
I'm
house.
still on vacation.
All right, regarding the minutes from the 28th, the 28th and the 28th. One be February, one be March.
Okay.
Kim is
Let's
working on those
let's
for us.
defer that. Again.
Okay.
Still a work in progress, so we'll hold those over and include the minutes that we generate tonight. We have no surety releases, so we no referrals to town board. No recommendations to make to or from the ZBA. Anything on the special projects? We'll report on.
Einstein.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yours is done, yours is
You
codified.
beat us to the
Good for
finish line.
you.
Uh,
I got some more things to do.
Training, I know some of you folks, lucky folks are going to Saratoga Springs this weekend. Have a good trip, safe travels.
And then
Mark,
there's
and bring-
one on Thursday too.
Bring the information back to us.
The training center. Ontario County. Is anybody going to that? You are?
Just me, okay.
Is that the erosion control and seeker?
Yes.
Floodplain and affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
Oh, perfect. And they're giving you dinner.
No, really?
Yes.
Okay, well, then I'll stay hungry. Okay.
Stay hungry.
Have the lunch in case they did.
Just in
This
case.
is the
you know.
county. Right.
And the one, the training that MRB is involved with, that's ongoing.
And then there is a Genesee Finger Lakes training, I want to say May 18th in Batavia. Am I right on the date?
May
That passed
18th
along.
is a Thursday,
Yeah.
the third Thursday in that one.
Okay. and Any credits earned go to Kim, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Tracking.
it's May 18th. 18th, spring local government.
Okay, next meeting, 25th. Pretty busy tonight.
Yes.
We just added.
Shauna says yes.
Yeah, plus.
Sunset Ridge.
So I'm not gonna read what's there, but it's pretty obvious.
You won't have Foster Road.
So
I
can
don't
I get some,
believe.
Oh, really?
can I get some guidance on a topic from those of you that have been here longer than me?
So no Foster Road.
Not, Foster Road will be resubmitted and reconfigured.
I was just gonna say something for a second.
I know.
All of these variances that are being accepted, I understand that that's not our purvey to make the decision. However, I think they were created for reasons of planning purpose in many ways. This group probably knows that I'm of the opinion that we should either follow the rules or change them. So I'm trying to figure out I'm looking for guidance on how you would recommend how I resolve some of these issues with them, I guess. Should I be hanging out with the ZBA and trying to understand what their process is? Should I'd be making more noise here because I disagree with most of the variances because we have rules coming in. I mean, the response is always the same and identical on every one of these, so that it doesn't create a worse burden and the hardship realized by the property owners. But they were set for a reason. And we walked past them every time because ZBA said they gave variance, and even the applicants now are challenging us with that. We're not here to have a conversation on code or what another board has ratified. So I'm struggling with that.
I mentioned at one point, and I don't know that this is the solution, I don't know this is something the planning board or town wants to be a part of. Maybe there's an alternative, but some communities, they do refer zoning applications and variances to the planning board. Thankfully, with the town of Canandaigua, the way you're situated, you guys meet before the ZBA meets. So in theory, one could presume to have PRC, and there's a zoning application that requires a site plan component. That application could, for the most part, come to you guys for a review and recommendation, and tell us something you want to do, and then go from you guys to the ZBA. And whether they had used your input or not, it's an option. It's just, I think that's something that you could consider doing, being that I think it lines itself up without creating hardship on the applications that are going through the ZBAs. I don't know that's a solution.
The other thing I would say, Mark, is that you are Mark. We are all individuals, and you could say vote however you wanted to on any subject. So it's really up to you to decide to choose to accept it or not, and then voice your opinion and vote accordingly.
If I could offer, I think you're gonna start to see some differences. Obviously, we're going through some changes. One of the big things is the zoning law determinations. I was talking to Sean about it. I saw 5 or 6 things sitting there as I was going through the code that should have been in the zoning law determination. But I can tell you, once going forward, they're gonna come through me before you guys ever see it. And so that's gonna start to tighten it up. The other thing I would tell you is the town board members are also very aware and they're concerned. I've been told by multiple town board members that they want to start interviewing the zoning board members before they change kind of the process. But the big thing is, once the town board changes the law, any previous precedents are gone. And so, it's called everybody's eye, and we're gonna start taking steps to address it. So, but I think the big thing for you guys is the zoning law determinations. I think that those are very important. Those need to be done early. Sean and I were talking that Sands application, that the site plan I was looking at said proposed. And so it just didn't match up. That should have been fixed. Either that should have said that it was an existing footprint, or if it's proposed, then it would be closer to the stream. Those types of inconsistencies, those have just got to get cleaned up before it gets to you guys.
And I mean, related to that one, that's a case where I believe the applicant's gonna do everything that they can to try to make it right.
Right.
So that's,
Yeah.
and I do trust it. I look at that application as well and look at the compliance, and I lived with some of this in the past, compliance issues related to where the lot is, right? So our coverage on the lakeside was well above normal percentages on that. They had the 19 acres across the street, so it showed it was a couple of percent. I wonder if we should be looking at that example as well and make sure that we protect against that in the future.
For split lots.
What's that?
For split lots.
Yeah.
When you split a roadway or whatever, it needs.
I lost it in mine on the other one because I had a town line that ran through my property. And I was told that you guys couldn't, on the Canandaigua couldn't make a decision on it because it was in Gorham and it was for rainwater runoff. And I continue to use that example because I think it was so much fun because my point was that the rainwater doesn't know that the town line is there. So there it was, that was in 2014 and it was the opposite position, completely opposite position of everything that I'm experiencing now. So. Again, I'm not against many of the projects because I think in talking to your question on the vote, I'm happy to do that. But I think I would rather that we work to a level of getting in unison on what we're expecting from a planning perspective, as much as we can. And when we disagree, as opposed to being the jerk that sits here all the time and just says, no, 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 right? It just doesn't, because then you guys start discounting me. And well, you may or may not, but I think emotionally, I think we just do that as people, right? If I'm the one that always complains, then my points become less valid. So I don't want that to happen either. I'm trying to balance some of those. So you're suggesting wait? That's what I'm hearing from you.
I think you're gonna start to see, I mean, even with the next meeting, we've got to go through those applications and make sure the ZLDs have caught everything. Like Sean said, even I had a conversation with one of the developers today, he's got to make changes, he can't even do what he's trying to do. That kind of stuff, and we need to do a better job of catching that before it gets to you. Incomplete applications should never get this far, and so that's what a bunch of these are.
I mean, I've had comments from two town board members now that have told me that we're probably the most powerful board in town when it comes to decision making, because we're the last stop, we're the last protection. So I do take that seriously. I'm done.
No, thank you for your comments. Certainly. Other board members sort of feel the same way. Well, tonight we say goodbye. Mark Leimer. Sean, we certainly wish you luck in your good career. You're right across the border, but
We say hello to our double agent.
and,
Gonna miss you. I'll miss you guys.
oh,
I'll be back though with the LBC on the flip side.
Does that mean we have to see more of him?
Yes, absolutely.
Do
Yeah,
you have to stay on the plate on Curio County?
I am not staying on the. No, no.
That's a great.
want to volunteer, Jeff?
No. You can't understand their minutes. You can't understand anything.
That's absolutely true.
No, you can understand it just fine. They deny almost everything.
Hey, John, thank you for.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
It's good to see you. Nice seeing you again. Retirement is not hurt you at all. You have an age to pick. And Doug, do you have anything else in terms of?
Well, yeah, here's
What's
what I'll
that?
tell you. So the town board meets on Monday, town board meeting on Monday. I fully anticipate Mike Warner, who's a zoning officer, will be appointed as a provisional promotion code enforcement officer. Beginning his classes and we're doing interviews for zoning officers. Plan is to hire a zoning officer immediately, and then hopefully with the town board, we're going to add an additional zoning officer. In the meantime, Sarah and myself will be very, very involved in the application process, and hopefully, trying to keep up with what Sean and Chris were doing. And Sean and Chris was with us for 9 years. Certainly thank you for her service, and Sean has been with us for 2 now. And thank you. But Shauna certainly has had a transition that she's been dealing with in the development office with the additional Mike and training there. And so we're going through that again. So I'm sure that there's going to be some hiccups, but I do hope that we can help clean some of this up before it gets to you guys, so you guys can have complete applications and make decisions.
Is there any update on Jean as well?
On Jean?
Jean Christman?
So Jean has announced that she's running for county clerk, so that would be in November. And then if there is a vacancy, assuming that, I shouldn't say assuming, but if she gets elected, I would think that she would probably resign December 31st when the town board will vote.
And you're beating the bushes for a secretary for this.
I keep trying to twist both John and and everybody's on. Let's see if they're, but yes.
An alternate for us.
We did meet with an alternate, Tim Schneider. What is his name?
Oh, for an alternate planning board member?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Oh, I'm sorry. I
last
thought you
week
said
we met
alternate
with
secretary.
Yeah, for, gosh, over an hour. And,
Yeah.
recommended that the town board appoint him as the alternate.
And he's a very good candidate for planning board, and he's also a fellow for the
Yes, there's a
Yeah.
gentleman interested in zoning board who met with us and also is gonna meet with Chip tomorrow. Talk about filling the alternate role. So that's. part of it.
Anything else? Organizationally or philosophy? Philosophically? Okay, Amanda.
Okay, I will make a motion to adjourn at 8:24 PM. Thank you,
Second.
Shauna.
Okay, motion second.
Aye.
Okay. See you on the 25th.
That was just have to stay.
Aye.
Yeah, for